in the morning, and I didn't send my email to you till 9:30. And then you responded right afterwards. So I didn't see your response. And I scrolled back, I'm like, that. And your response is, thank you. So I was like, there must be some clock thing happening.
Yeah. Well, I went in and I reset it several times, but it continued to lag, though now it's miraculously fixed. And it's working, so.
Just so everyone knows, we are live on Access Humboldt. So.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
So let's see. So everybody's here except Elaine. Is that?
She just is joining now. I hope.
And Nancy's on the phone.
She is.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. Sorry, I have to unmute. It takes a little while.
Yeah, I haven't seen or heard you in seems like years.
Yeah.
Even though it's only been 4 months.
I was actually at the last board meeting.
Oh, you were? Oh, okay.
Was,
Sorry, I didn't acknowledge you.
That's okay. That's no problem.
Probably
I've
had
been
something to do with
watching.
your clock.
Elaine's trying to join, but she seems to be having a hard time connecting. Not sure what's going on there.
Would you like to give her a minute or two?
Sure. So how was your horseback ride?
It was great. It was really, really nice.
What did you do? Where did you go? Up one of the Redwood Park trails or?
No, we were just doing some arena work.
English or Western?
Quasi-Western. It's a Australian saddle.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty comfy.
I'm not sure I've ever seen one of those. Is that like an English saddle with a horn?
Like an open wallet.
There is
Slap
that.
leather, huh?
No, it was good.
And I don't know how you call it comfortable.
It's pretty comfortable, and it's nice to be outside, and it's nice to do something besides head work.
Yeah, really. Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably the more important thing.
Need to do that. Plus, get your horse time in. That's important too.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
that's why I left them out there for you guys.
Tyler, is she making it in?
Thanks, guys. And I'm gonna be in here, so my office is good tonight, guys.
I am guessing this is Elaine here by phone.
Hi, I'm here. I'm on the phone. I was having trouble connecting on the computer, so I will still try to get video up, but for now I'm on the phone.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, I'll call this July 9th meeting of the Humboldt Waste Management Board of Directors to order. Good evening to everyone. This Board of Directors meeting is being held in a video format in an effort to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The meeting is also being aired live on Access Humboldt with a permanent recording available on archive.org. Callers joining us by phone, when you are asked, please identify yourself by name. We are able to see the number you are calling in from, but would prefer to identify you by name when asking for comment or input. Just a reminder, when board members and other participants are not actively speaking, please mute your microphone. The meeting will be difficult to hear if microphones are not muted, except for the individual speaking. All votes will be taken through a roll call vote. Please be sure to unmute your computer and answer A or nay when your name is called. Public comment on this evening's agenda was accepted via email and in writing for both specific agenda items and general comments until 3 p.m. today. Comments on specific agenda items will be read by staff during that agenda item. Written and emailed comments for public comment will be read under item 3, public comment. So Tyler, can we have roll call, please?
Boom.
Yo.
Pereira,
Here.
Sweeney,
Present.
Castellano,
Here.
Wilson,
Here.
Hogan.
Here.
And Elaine, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. Next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board of directors and are enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, board members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So the consent calendar this evening includes approving minutes from June 11th, 2020 board meeting and approved May 2019-2020 financial report. Are there any questions or comments, or would any member of the board wish to remove an item from the consent calendar?
It might help if you go by name, Michael.
Yeah, go down the roll call.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Tyler, could you do that?
Bone,
Yep.
Pereira,
No need to
comment.
pull anything.
Sweeney,
No.
Castellano,
No need to pull anything.
Wilson,
No.
Hogan.
Nope, looks good.
And does any member of the public wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing or seeing anything, can I entertain a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
If a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. So using the roll call vote, Tyler, can we have members vote on the consent calendar?
Bone,
Yep.
Pereira,
Aye.
Sweeney,
Aye.
Castellano,
Aye.
Wilson,
Yes.
Hogan.
Yes.
Motion carries. So the next item on our agenda is oral and written communications. This is time provided for people to address the board on matters not on this evening's agenda. Did we receive any public comments for this via email or in writing, Jill?
Shortly before 5 o'clock, we did receive an email from a Jason Robo. That email has been forwarded to all board members. I don't believe Tyler's had an opportunity yet to have it uploaded as input to any of the agenda items at this juncture. It's not clear whether it was actually specific to an agenda item or addressing recycling in general. So I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge it as part of written communications that has been received.
Even though it was after the 3 p.m.
Yes.
Kind of deadline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And we may see it sometime during the meeting, or you'll just send that to board members?
It was sent to you, I believe, at 5 o'clock.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, I think Tyler
That's
was able to
correct.
get that sent out right away.
Okay.
And
I didn't see it.
yeah, 5 o'clock exactly, it got sent to everybody. So
Okay.
sorry, we couldn't get it to you any faster. He literally got it at like 4:57 or something.
Okay, thank you.
To the chair,
Yes.
what's it pertain to? And so I can't draw it up because I've got a connection issue. So what's it pertain to and the basis of it? And
So Michael doesn't have it yet. If you like, I can go ahead and read it. And because it just simply says.
is it regarding
recycling-
CRV?
It's kind of, it's just kind of a number of different issues.
Right.
If you'd like, I can read it.
Yeah, go ahead and read it, Jill.
Okay. And I'm wishing, hold on. There we go. Let me just get this a little larger. I have a variety of criticisms with the nature of so-called recyclables. I recommend the book Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way That We Make Things, co-authored by William McDonough and Michael Braunegart. Recycling is an important part of the building a better world. It is something that we shouldn't give up on when things get tough. There are ways to innovate and continue recycling access while minimizing reliance on it. I believe that solutions can be promoted through dialogue with and strategies promoted by local government, education, and other organizations. Businesses like gas stations that sell CRV should have to recycle bins by law. Not everyone is eligible for recycling pickups. I think it's practically criminal to trash recyclables. Laziness is also an issue. It's insanity to shut down the ability to recycle for those who make the effort. Efforts should also be made to incentivize or otherwise nurture products with minimal and/or no packaging, like produce and canning. Beck's bread, for instance, comes in a compostable bag. Promoting upcycling of waste and recyclables can help. Fire and Light also transmutes glass into assets. The Upcycle, Beyond Sustainability, Designing for Abundance. Also by William McDonough and Michael Braunegart, I think should be required reading for you and any informed citizenry that desire to be mindful of the environment. Buying bulk items are another crucial way to minimize streams of waste and recyclables. Better safety gear like glove suits, perhaps, and eye protection could protect recycling workers. Luckily, Eureka is a pretty temperate and operates in the shade, minimizing misery from these additional potential safety measures. Though these strategies should be disseminated to the public regardless through some sort of PSA, regardless of COVID, as the environment is in crisis. A KIM article notes Hambro's Del Norte facility has a buyback process that allows minimal contact with their employees and the public. I'm unsure if you've been there, but it seems that they may have something worth learning about their protocols. Maybe the board needs to take a field trip. I may have nearly run out of recyclable space. Investing in a kegerator and buying some beer from Madera Brewery and growlers from Humboldt Regeneration.
Kegerator.
Kegerator. I don't drink beer, so apparently I'm out of the loop. There are many ways that we can do better at tackling COVID, promoting hand washing, dissuading people from touching their faces, proper etiquette when sneezing or coughing. Recycling prevents additional pollution to our air and water. Throwing nature under the bus any more than we already do would be a sad course of action to take.
Okay, thank you for that. That's in the record.
Mhm.
Next item on our agenda is to receive information report on the status of the Eureka Recycling Center. And I believe that will be Jill.
So that will be me. And what I'm going to do, if I can get the right mouse to work here, I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation for you, and
Excellent.
I'll walk everybody through. Can you see my screen all right?
I can.
Okay, excellent. Everybody can see that?
I think so.
Yes.
All right. I had to do this for another thing, and the screen was not sharing at all, so I want to make sure now before I start. So good evening. The information that we're going to be presenting to the board this evening is to provide you all a more detailed understanding of the Eureka Recycling Center's activities, including CRV buyback services. This informational report is designed to assist the board with the next agenda item in providing us with staff direction as you all consider the required provisions for the protection of staff and our customers. The Eureka Recycling Center accepts source-separated recyclable materials such as glass, paper, cardboard, aluminum, and plastic. It also accepts electronic waste, scrap metal, televisions, and used appliances, and it is a certified California Redemption Center for used beverage container, and we refer to that as the CRV buyback. The Eureka Recycling Center processes and bales of approximately 4,000 tons of material annually. And that is material that is marketed and shipped. And it's comprised of about 3,000 tons of recyclable materials with an additional 1,000 tons of CRV beverage containers. And I'm sorry, my sister's calling me. Doesn't that figure? And additionally, we want to note that about 255 tons of e-waste is collected and shipped to a processor. The Eureka Recycling, yeah, it is. The Eureka Recycling Center employs 8 employees full-time Monday through Friday, and we have 5 employees who work on Saturdays and Sundays. The hours on Saturdays and Sundays are slightly reduced in terms of the public, so that way they can perform routine housekeeping activities. Those are the staffing levels that have been necessary to handle receipt of regular ERC materials, which are those source separated recyclables, e-waste, and appliances, as well as the CRV buyback activities, and the performance of cash transactions, appliance dismantling, material bailing, as well as marketing and loading of material for freight and record keeping. Our staff members are cross-trained in multiple areas of operations, including the tip floor and Cummings Road landfill. And this helps to ensure that we have overall operational flexibility and allows staff to be assigned across operations as is necessary for special projects, vacation coverage, and or other types of needs. The California Beverage Container and Litter Reduction Act was passed in 1986 and established a recycling program designed to be self-funded to accomplish 2 primary goals. One was to reduce litter and achieve a recycling rate of about 80% for eligible containers. The state mandated deposit program, which predates the curbside collected recycling programs, served to incentivize consumers to recycle instead of throwing materials into trash. This is accomplished through customers paying a California redemption value deposit when they purchase beverages from a retailer. Consumers may then redeem the container at an in-store redemption center or at a certified recycling center to receive their deposit back. And the CRV deposit and redemption is about 5 cents for containers less than 24 ounces and 10 cents for those containers that are over 24 ounces. The certified center then markets the material to recoup the CRV payout and to cover the costs that have been associated with labor and overhead costs. However, over the last 10 years, this has become more difficult as commodity values have declined, which has contributed to over 1,300 CRV recycling centers throughout the state of California closing their doors over the last 5 years. Today, less than 1,200 CRV redemption centers are able to serve Californians. CalRecycle is required to identify what they refer to as convenience zones. Every convenience zone not specifically exempted by CalRecycle must have a certified recycling center within the zone, or each dealer within its boundaries that sells beverages must either, 1, redeem those containers in the store or make a daily payment of $100 to the state. Basically, the intent is that consumers are able to conveniently redeem their CRV containers and to receive those monies back. Convenience zones are considered either served, unserved, or exempt. And the only ones who can grant the exceptions, of course, is going to be CalRecycle. And in Humboldt County, CalRecycle has identified 23 convenience zones, and over the years has granted exemptions from their having to provide CRV redemption services to 78% of them. So a total of 18 convenience zones were granted exceptions. There's 1 convenience zone, which is unserved. And then there are 4 convenience zones, which are serviced through certified recycling centers, which include HWMA, Recology Eel River Disposal, which is Fortuna and Redway, as well as Humboldt Sanitation in McKinleyville. I want to note that it doesn't mean that there are 23 stores. Zones may have multiple stores inside of a zone. So for instance, with HWMA, for the radius, which is identified, we serve Costco as well as Eureka Natural Foods and Grocery Outlet. So over the past 10 years, certified CRV redemption centers in Humboldt have been reduced pretty significantly. And I want to note that the list that you're going to see here is not all inclusive. They were just the ones that we could remember because there have been a number of them that have gone out over a period of time. And since 2010, these are the remaining sites that are performing CRV buyback services. There is Tom's Trash, and they're doing business as New River, located up in Willow Creek, and they are a very small outfit with limited hours. I've tried to call them a few times and only received the answering machine there, so I can't give you any information specifically about them. And the overall effect of these closures has resulted in the public, who rightfully expect to conveniently redeem their containers, to travel further and further to seek remaining available options. The Eureka Recycling Center, we pulled up some information on our CRV trends from 2011 through 12. And since 2013, the traffic flow and the number of customers and CRV material processed by the recycling center has steadily increased. The staff report is presenting average figures that were taken over a longer duration, so you are going to see a difference between the number that's in the staff report versus the numbers that are in the slide. I just tried to create some stronger visuals so you can track it. So I simply used a 6-month average from December of 2011 through June of 2012, just to kind of create that base. And then I did the same thing for the 6-month average, basically from March 15th back to September 15th, so you can see things. So using the same 6-month averages for comparison for the next few slides, overall customer transactions have steadily increased as a result of several privately owned redemption centers closing. So one of the things that we want to note here is that there was 228 average daily transactions in that December to June 2012. When we move forward to the September to March of this year, we were averaging 465 average daily transactions. What I want to note in particular is that the transfer station averages traffic of 346 transactions per day. So when we look at it for sort of a comparable, your average workday has 480 minutes. Our staff in the Eureka Recycling Center and handling CRV transactions specifically, not even the other activities that they do, accepting e-waste and appliances and whatnot like that, they are averaging more than a transaction a minute currently right now. And probably the other component is that has been done with no significant changes in our staffing levels since 2013. In terms of the daily cash, the daily CRV cash payout trends, we see something really similar, which was our average daily payout in December 2011 through June 2012 was $645 a day. By the time we closed the recycling center because of COVID-19, from September until March, our average daily payout is $3,323 per day that is cashed out for the CRV.
So about $7, $8 a transaction?
Probably about that. I mean, it runs the gamut. Some people come in with more. Some people are coming in with,
you come in with $2 and you come in with
Yeah.
$2 each. I'm coming with 40.
Yeah, we could have gotten into a lot of weeds on these kinds of presentations, but we really just wanted to kind of give you a sense of the general activity that you see. In terms of the trends so far as weight, and these are in pounds per day, we were averaging about 3,800 pounds per day from that December 2011 through June 2012, and an average of 4,946. The piece that was really interesting here is you'll see that it's just kind of steady, and then it increases and it's dropping down. And when you think about, well, that's not really making sense. You know, if transactions are going up and payouts are going up, why is the poundage going down? The explanation is really simple. We have seen a continued shift from those heavier container, such as glass or aluminum, to increasingly shifting to plastic. So our overall weight is decreasing because of the material composition. In terms of the Eureka Recycling Center budget, you know, when we have our discussions at the April, well, typically April and May meetings, we're talking about, you know, the whole picture of what's happening in our operations. All of this information has been presented to the board. I extrapolated the information for purposes of simplicity so that we can walk you through things. But the upshot is the expenditures that are related to the Eureka Recycling Center, and this is the Eureka Recycling Center inclusive of all activities, including CRV, not just CRV, is a little over $2.5 million is what we spend in the operation of the recycling center. And we rely on revenue, which is generated from commodity sales to recoup the cost to operate the Eureka Recycling Center. And so what that looks like when we look solely at the revenue which is generated by the materials, we're able to support it to the tune of 1.7 million. In 2010, the board directed a portion of the waste management fee to include a line item to support the Eureka Recycling Center. And over time, as commodity values have declined, that support has continued to increase. So again, we projected 1.7 million that's going to be generated through commodity material sales. And what we had to do was to, did I just lose that again? Through the recycling program fee, we're subsidizing it to the tune of $673,556. But you're going to note that that's 2.4 million. So we had a deficit or a loss of $98,000 that we had anticipated, and through the budgetary process, that got folded into our overall operational cost. I do want to note that this particular slide with this 98,000, I inadvertently pulled a number in your staff report. It says that it was 101,000, and I just pulled an older number that hadn't quite gotten finished. So the number that you have is a little higher, but the correct number is presented here on the slide. So as noted, we are currently subsidizing the cost of the Eureka Recycling Center on the solid waste budget to the tune of almost $750,000. Just to refamiliarize board members with our waste management fee, this is the document that, again, everybody receives as part of our conversations in budgetary conversations. And this is where that recycling program line item is. What you might want to note, if you take a look at all of the different costs that are embedded into the waste management fee, which creates our total $155 a ton for self-haul or $129 for our franchise haulers, it is, with the exception of our facility fees for operations, which is transportation, disposal, indirect, and capital expenditures, it is our next largest expenditure for our tip fee. So almost $10 a ton on that we pay for our solid waste is going to support the recycling center activities.
What?
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
What's the total percentage on diversion that we're allowing by taking all those buybacks and things?
That's a good question. I don't have it at the top of my my fingertips. I'll ask Eric if he can pull that up at the end.
Because I mean, I
The
think the
presentation?
whole, because I think if the diversion rates are getting up at the same time as we're doing that, then we're actually creating what the waste management was actually started 4 years ago.
That is correct. And what I'll do is I'll have Eric bring that forward if he's able to tease that out. It's not a linear relationship, I will tell you, because it's a piece of the overall diversion activities which are occurring both at the transfer station as well as what we are doing, as well as what the cities are doing with curbside recycling. It's not a standalone. It's not mutually exclusive.
But still positive at the end.
Right. I mean, what it represents is 1,000 tons annually of the total. So, you know, where we are today is that we've got the metaphorical frog in the boiling water. There's been a gradual increase in non-CRV and CRV activity that has become normalized over time. We are reaching staffing and facility capacity in being able to handle the material. The overall commodity market is at the lowest that it has been in 15 years. And that is resulting in an increased reliance on solid waste fees to support overall recycling services. And those factors alone have posed a significant challenge. And certainly the industry has been hopeful that recovery was somewhere on the horizon. And statewide, over 1,200 certified CRV redemption sites have closed over the last 3 years. And I want to make it clear, it's not that you can't recycle CRV. CRV can still be recycled. It's not mutually exclusive, if you will. It's the issue is having consumers being able to redeem the money that they put as a deposit, and that's the issue. So it's less about the recycling component than it is being able to recover those funds. And you know, what I want to note is that, you know, prior to the coronavirus pandemic, the CRV system has been actively crumbling. And most recently, CalRecycle has issued an additional $5 million in statewide processing grants to rural CRV redemption centers. But HWMA, Humboldt Sanitation, and Recology, we're not receiving any financial assistance because we don't qualify. Through the pandemic, however, we have been rather stymied because CalRecycle has remained silent, and they have offered no guidance or assistance to CRV centers, and yet CRV deposits continue to be collected. And that is creating a significant tension between community members who are entitled to collect their deposits and the recycling centers who are actively losing money because they cannot recoup their cost of providing those services. And so then you add to this now the need for additional provisions and equipment to protect employees from potential COVID-19 exposure, as well as emerging COVID outbreaks in recycling centers. And essentially the system is in free fall. Specifically, I'm referring to last week, Marin Sanitation and Recycling. They have had 42 of their recycling center employees test positive for coronavirus, so they've had to shut down some of their operations. Similar things have happened in the city of Burbank. They have a recycling center which is operated by the city, and they had an outbreak, so they are now closed. Lompoc, and then there have been a number of facilities that have remained open through the pandemic, and it seems to be recycling centers that are handling material manually that seems to be the vulnerable point. And part of the reason that we restricted those activities is A, it's non-essential, And B, we process 170 tons of solid waste every day, and we need to ensure that we have the capability and the capacity from a staffing perspective to handle all of the waste that is coming in from throughout Humboldt County, getting it into trucks and getting it to landfill. So, you know, our decisions were a result of having to prioritize our operations. So HWMA has long had a goal of being a one-stop shop for solid waste, green waste, recycling, household hazardous waste, special diversion programs like carpet and mattresses, and CRV buyback activities. And the pandemic exposed an unrecognized and a core vulnerability in that business model, as it has with so many other industries and businesses. Everybody is now having to adapt. Following the local and state and federal declarations and the shelter in place that was related to the pandemic, Eureka Recycling Center staff were reassigned to the tip floor and the Cummings Road landfill so that we could ensure resiliency and continuity of operations and of our essential operations, and to minimize employees from potential viral exposure. Employees were assigned into specific work areas such as the transfer station, landfill, scale house, and administration, and further, you know, segregated into designated groups with minimal or no staffing overlap. We had 2 employees that have been assigned to the Cummings Road landfill, and in May, the landfill coverage was expanded from 5 days per week to 7 days per week as a result of the environmental system monitoring which was required by the flare. We've had some operational challenges up there, and so we've had to expand the hours of operations there. We've had high-risk employees or employees with childcare coverage issues, and we've been able to provide them accommodations. We do continue to have 7 days a week transfer station operations, and there we are. Sorry, I got myself a little off key here. So as staff is planning to resume our non-essential services, we have secured, we've completed our infectious disease plan. We did develop a 4-stage reopening plan, which aligns with the state. We have initiated our 5-year Calorie Cycle CRV certification. We do not have that completed yet. That is, it expired in May 31st. And we have identified a number of site improvements that will be necessary, as well as protocols to ensure employee and public safety. We did receive certification through the County of Humboldt so that we are able to operate our essential services as well as our non-essential services. And we have initiated our 5-year transfer processing report, which is due to the county LEA on July 20th. And we've also done the evaluation of our level of service and staffing needs, which will be the next item that you will be hearing from. So I do want to note, to circle back to our 5-year certification for CRV, one of the requirements that all CRV centers must meet is to take a pre-certification course, which Calorie Cycle is requiring in-person attendance. Board members did receive a copy of the letter that we sent to Calorie Cycle, and one of the questions to Calorie Cycle was whether they are considering holding virtual trainings. And the response that I had to follow up with was, wow, we got your letter, we forwarded it up to upper management, but no, we are not doing virtual trainings. Everybody has to come to Sacramento. And so last week, on this week, we had 2 people that were enrolled to attend the training on July 7th. But last week, Governor Newsom rolled back reopening plans for counties, including Sacramento. And Calorie Cycle is still requiring in-person attendance to attend an 8-hour training in a conference room. And the 2 employees did not feel safe attending an out-of-county training. from, attendees from throughout the state, and canceled their attendance. And I want to note that this came right on the heels of a school district in the Bay Area. I'm suddenly not remembering if it was Santa Clara or San Mateo, but they had 42 principals all come in to attend a conference training. And all 42 individuals have now been exposed to COVID because they were in a training for 8 hours in close proximity to each other in the midst of this pandemic. So we have been really challenged with Calorie Cycle because, in part, they just haven't been able to pivot to meet some of the challenges that the world is facing. Again, I do want to note that to reopen the Eureka Recycling Center and to meet social distancing and sanitary protocols, we are making those site design modifications. Those are ongoing now, and that will help us to ensure social distancing, the container disinfection, as well as minimal material handling protocols, which we have been developing. So this bullet kind of addresses a point that was brought up in Mr. Robo's email and asking about the Hambro site up in Del Norte County. The answer is pretty straightforward. A lot of small volume CRV centers have been able to remain open. Some have had their reduced hours or they have closed, but for those who have remained open, most of them are small and they are not handling solid waste. This is their core focus. They only do CRV, buyback, and if somebody has become ill, it would not potentially compromise the other aspects of their operation. In our particular case, the transfer station and potentially the landfill. Another item that we did touch on with the board in April was that the broker who we, almost everybody uses to ship their CRV material to, they ceased accepting material on March 21st, and they have been slowly reopening and accepting material with really strict acceptance protocols. They've been very concerned about their employees. And again, as the shelter in place orders are being relaxed, nationally, there are emerging reports of sanitary and recycling center employees contracting COVID-19. So because the recycling center has sort of always been part of our overall operations, initially it was handled through a contract, and in 2010, HWMA took on operation of the Eureka Recycling Center. We really haven't known what it looks like when we're not doing recycling, and in particular for CRV buyback. And some of the things that we have observed with the suspension of CRV buyback activities is that there has been a significant decrease of garbage and debris that has been left in the streets from individuals salvaging through bins and residential containers throughout Eureka. I'm going to pause here for half a moment and say, yes, the Eureka Recycling Center is closed. That does not mean that we aren't accepting material. We continue to accept mixed recycling over at the transfer station. We continue to receive electronic waste. We've continued to receive appliances and many of the items. Really, the closure of the recycling center was related directly to the CRV buyback. HWMA is also responsible for maintaining trash pickup along the unimproved parcel across the street and along West Hawthorne Street. And in the 3 months prior to the Eureka Recycling Center's closure, the weekly average of confrontations with individuals on the property was over 11 per week. And with the closure, that has decreased to less than 5. I think it's even less than that now. Illegally disposed trash has also seen a similar downturn with a weekly average decrease of 590 pounds pre-closure to about 350 pounds post-closure. That material increasingly...
Through the chair.
Yes,
I know
go
we've
ahead.
talked about this over the years, and I know there's a reason why, but with the encounters down, that's great. And the issues we have with our property across the street, why, and I know I've heard this, why don't we just fence it?
We could fence it. The
I mean,
challenge is,
it's got 11 paths into it now.
so the problem, yeah.
And why don't we
the-
just fence it and let it be the wetlands it's always going to be?
So one of the challenges with fencing it is that we do maintain it, number one. So if we simply fence it, we will have a single, pretty much a restricted ingress egress, which on the surface sounds pretty good, except that people who are wanting to get into the property are going to cut the fence. And we already have that happening with our perimeter site fencing. We're constantly having to do repairs where people are cutting the fence, which will take you into my next one. We have been working really hard in order to maintain the vegetation, maintain line of sight, to work with the property owners so that if they are seeing anything that we're not able to observe, we are able to get in there very quickly and move people off. So we don't have people camping on there, even when we were seeing a significant amount of activity over at the Devil's Playground. And people are aware that there is this sort of symbiotic relationship in that they are coming over in which to sell materials. So we do move people on, unfortunately, it is an open space, but leaving it open right now has actually been pretty straightforward. And it's, I think it's going to be less problematic than putting a cyclone fence around it, which we're going to have to continually have to maintain and to repair.
And why do people put fences up? I'm just saying a fence would work. I mean, we do it everywhere. You look everywhere else, they have fences.
Okay.
And you see they're putting gates in.
Okay.
I'm just saying, with a lot of man hours, it sounds like, with all those altercations. And the liability that one could turn violent.
Hey, Jill.
Yes.
Rex, just so you know, those altercations are not just on the property across the street. Most of those altercations come inside the Eureka Recycling Center.
And that's actually where I'm going next, Eric.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Not what it sounded like.
No, I understand. So we have seen a reduction of activity across the street, and we've also seen a dramatic decline in confrontational behavior from our customers. In the 3 months prior to the closure of the Eureka Recycling Center, Eureka Recycling staff requested a supervisor or higher level staff member 41 times. By comparison, in the same time frame, the tip floor had a need of 7 instances where a supervisor higher level staff is needed. Now, I want to make it really clear that that doesn't mean that there are only 41 times of some form of confrontation. By and large, recycling center staff manage people on a regular basis, and they are able to resolve matters at the time, and that they are not necessarily having to receive a supervisor. We've also seen a pretty significant decrease in IV drug use in proximity to our facility, as well as a decrease of discarded syringes. An average of 35 syringes are collected weekly prior to the Eureka Recycling Center closure, and post-closure we've seen that decrease to less than 17 per week. The other thing that we've noted is that there's been a significant reduction of facility break-ins to take the CRV material. So because of the value of that material, the volume that is accepted, and the fact that it's stored on site, the Eureka Recycling Center has been a frequent after-hours burglary target where individuals are stealing those CRV containers and then they bring them back in to redeem for cash during operating hours. With the suspension of the CRV centers, all CRV centers, so that's inclusive of Fortuna and McKinleyville, there's no place to sell it, and we have seen a significant decline in site alarms, break-ins, theft, and the need to have the police to respond to our sites. So I've asked Eric, because at some point you're gonna get tired of hearing me talk, I've asked Eric just to dive in and touch a little bit on the Eureka Recycling Center in terms of maybe what else, excuse me, what else it could be. Let me pull that back. Eric, why don't you go ahead and start chatting?
Okay. So as Director Duffy noted in the staff report, CRV and its related activities take up around 60% of the total footprint right now, currently at the Eureka Recycling Center. So freeing that space up would allow us to do a lot of things inside there. It would allow us to shift the acceptance of certain materials from the tip floor that we currently accept at the tip floor over to being accepted at the recycling center. With this comes the hopes that shifting that traffic away from the transfer station scales would ease a little bit of the burden that we're starting to see just with the overall traffic congestion at the transfer station. So a couple items that we thought may be a good fit over there would be tires. So now we no longer charge the weight for tires. They no longer need a scale to charge for those items. So customers could bring them into the recycling center. We would have staff stack them, and then they would just be charged on a per tire basis. Mattresses is another good example. They don't need to be weighed with any type of scale. So again, we could ferry all of those customers over away from the transfer station to the recycling center. A couple of other possible future planning when we're doing master planning or just general facility planning. Green waste currently has been a bugaboo for us in operations. There's a possibility that could be moved inside. That would cover us for not only stormwater purposes, but just in general, that area of the transfer station gets very congested as well. The other thing is future diversion programs that have not been developed. So when the Hawthorne Street transfer station was built, it was really built just to take in trash and load trash. In the 10 years that I've been here, we've garnered an enormous amount of different diversion programs that we quite frankly just no longer have the space for. So that would hopefully give us the opportunity to not only revisit other diversion opportunities that we either reduced or triaged in the past, such as construction demolition debris, gypsum board. We used to collect different types of non-ferrous metals outside of the waste stream. All of those were triaged for more beneficial and cost-effective programs simply because of the lack of footprint and available coverage that we have at the transfer station. So that's kind of one of the things that we could do with that space if CRV was no longer there.
Right. So I want to make it clear, we are continuing to do recycling and diversion, and really the key of our conversation and what's going to lead into the next agenda item is more specifically around the support of CRV. And one of the challenges that we have is that the CRV program is a state program, and HWMA is limited as to how we can, quote, fix that system. And so we have, along with many other folks throughout the state, we did meet with Senator McGuire's staff in order to present an outline of the issues. We sent that letter to Cal Recycle, which the board was CC'd on, and we haven't received any sort of response. We are having preliminary exploration at a staff level to see whether a nonprofit or other organization could take on CRV redemption activities. Cal Recycle is offering some grant funds in order to establish innovative pilot programs to create that convenient redemption system. We're not eligible necessarily for what they have in mind, and neither is Recology. We're looking at putting another letter after we have a conversation with the board, to Cal Recycle regarding their lack of enforcement regarding convenience zones and their continued propensity to offer exemptions to retailers who are obligated to perform the buyback activities by state law. And their own agency has been exempting them. So, there's that point. And then, of course, the final point, which is there is a need to fundamentally overhaul an antiquated system the fact that we have curbside recycling in most communities, we are seeing that people are participating at a pretty high level. And through the CRV, we've kind of created a two-tiered system where one material is worth perceived money, but what people don't necessarily see is the cost for them to give their nickel and then get their nickel back. There's a significant cost that's been associated with the redemption program. And right now, we, as well as most entities, are subsidizing it through continued loss and just the inability to recoup the money because of the commodity value that we have. So that's kind of like the issues all rolled up. And I will tell you that putting all this information together has been really challenging because there have been a number of obstacles and hurdles that we've been trying to navigate, and doing so with the mindfulness around people are paying money into a state program and they are entitled to get that money back. And our core mission is to handle solid waste as well as the diversion programs. And we're finding ourselves in a really uncomfortable juncture because of what has transpired as a result of the pandemic. So I'm happy to entertain any additional questions and provide some additional information as I have it, but that's essentially trying to set the stage for the board's more detailed knowledge around what's been happening over at the Eureka Recycling Center.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It was very informative and well presented. So Tyler, using the roll call vote, can we go down the board members' names?
There's no need to, there's no need, this is informational only, Michael, so there's no need to, for any action right now. It was.
Is this,
No, I realize that.
Is this one-sided or is this just informational and no discussion?
No, you can have
No.
discussion.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. We go down the roll call vote.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to vote.
No. So does that work, Tyler?
Well, that does. Are you ready for me?
Yes, go for it.
Bone.
What, are we voting on if I want to talk or not, or I'm a little confused?
No, we're just
This
having
is you if you have comments.
questions or comments, yes,
Okay.
on Jill's presentation.
Very confused. Well, Jill, like you said, HWMA hasn't always done this. We took it over years ago, and it's definitely not in our mission statement or what the JPA was actually formed years ago. But it's ours now.
Mhm.
And we like to blame everything on the pandemic. And I mean, honest to God truth, we're not making any money off it because nobody's paying any money for this stuff. It used to make money. But the problem is we're still taking this stuff out of the landfill. It's something we took on, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know if anybody else is getting 3 or 4 phone calls a week about, I mean, you can buy a 40 case of water for $3.98 at Walmart, a guy told me today, but he has to pay $2 CRV and then not get it back. So I told him, I said, why don't you just buy one big bottle and just put a filter on your thing? But that's a whole different other story. So I'm just saying, I think this is the devil's in the details. I think we've bought it, we've owned it. And now that the water's getting, it's not working real well, we want out of it. And let's blame it on the pandemic. And I understand the constraints of the size and things like that. But I mean, time to get innovative. I don't know how. I don't know how we can streamline. I'm not sure. But I mean, we've got 13 employees, I think, involved in it. But we're not taking it. And I know they're doing other things, but they would be doing recycling for doing that. So I would like to see more information on when we're going to start taking it back, and then figure out how we're going to make it work. Because that's what we've done in the past. And just to say, this ain't working real well, let's tell Cal Recycle this sucks. Cal Recycle knows it sucks. So
what I will say is that it's not because of the pandemic. The pandemic was just kind of the final straw. It's the
I know,
proverbial,
but we
know,
mentioned
so-
it 11 times, so.
Well, it's because that's what resulted in closing the center. We have been seeing a tremendous amount of stress and financial impact, and it's just been so gradual that everybody, it was like, oh, we have a $700 day. Oh, we have an $1,000 day. Everybody's, moving faster and faster, and it becomes normalized, if you will. The driver is the economic implications of a commodity market, which is no longer supporting that program. And Cal Recycle has been completely unwilling.
Exactly. Cardboard's
address
ending up back
this.
in the landfill
And
after
we
it leaves
need
here.
to have our elected officials, as well as our state officials, being willing to wrestle with this. So we'll continue the conversation. That's why we're presenting it to the board, so that we can, we're trying to figure out what the solution is also.
And just a clarification, all the breakouts in recycling centers were actually in MRFs or pick lines, weren't they?
Not all of them, but some of them, yes.
All right. I mean, the big
Yeah.
ones were all in pick lines.
There was one of them at least one of them that I'm aware of that was not.
Okay.
There have been a number of them. It's run the gamut. And honestly, you can't say that it was material to person or person to person. They just don't have enough information other than
No,
somebody.
I'm not
was
saying
sick.
that, but I'm
So,
just saying
yeah.
it's the nature of the pick line rather than.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rex.
Pereira.
I think more of my comments will be related to the next agenda item in terms of talking about staffing. But I do recognize that CRV has been a challenge, not just for HWMA. And so figuring out how we, get through the short term and then maybe reassess if, actually, I'm going to save my comments for the next item, because I think it'll pertain more when we're talking about reorganizing staffing and what we're going to do with CRV. So
Okay,
thank you for the presentation.
Yeah. It's
Okay, Tyler.
Let's see, thanks for the presentation. I have a few questions. The first one, when I was reading the agenda pack on page 19, where you write that HWMA isn't a designated processor with Cal Recycle.
Yeah.
I'm curious why that is. Or
That's
why we
actually, yeah, that's a classification. So Recology is a processor, and Humboldt Sanitation is a processor because they handle glass. And we are not a designated processor. We're a collection site.
Okay. And is that why HWMA doesn't qualify for certain kinds of assistance, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to be designated as a processor, or is just sort of one of those like technical?
I'm going to ask Eric if he's had an opportunity to look into that question specifically and his capacity.
Yeah, so when HWMA first took over ACRC, the determination was made to not become a processor because there were so many local processors. The benefit at that time wasn't there. But if we did end up becoming a processor, there would be a lot of conversations that we'd have to have around operations on the site. So it wouldn't be as simply as taking material, baling it, and sending it to a commodity market any longer. There's some other steps in there that we would need to look at. A lot more administration tasks would come in as well regarding that. So to answer your first question, the reason that HWMA originally did not become a processor and only a collection center was because of the two larger local collection or processors that Jill mentioned.
And
Gotcha.
And as I recall, if HWMA had become a processor, then they would not have been able to receive any funding.
Interesting.
So
That's
it would have
correct.
been
So
one or the other, and yeah.
Gotcha. And then I think at some point in the report there was not this report, but in the minute or in the information we received prior, was talk of like a reverse vending machine or something like that. And so okay, so I think my question requires a little speculation, you know, around Cal Recycle, which may or may not be possible. I don't know. But I guess, okay, so if HWMA ceases doing buyback, basically, will that change how exemptions are made for local retailers? And then, I mean, to me, that seems like the reverse vending machine idea. I mean, I don't know how much quantity it can take, but, you know, that would be a more hands-off approach. You know, is that something that I guess, I mean, I think I'm also imagining that there's a bit of a chess game happening. And so, you know, like maybe in order to kind of put the ball back into, sorry, mixed metaphors, into their court, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, how might Cal Recycle respond to this? Obviously they'll have to do something, or I'm imagining they'll have to do something, maybe not. Okay. So then I guess
there's CRV centers that are closing right now, and Cal Recycle has been silent.
Right. Okay. And so what about then when retailers potentially lose their exemption? What happens then?
So I couldn't speak for that because we haven't actually seen it happen here. In 2016, we did go through a process because the city of Arcata did not have any recycling centers, and Cal Recycle contacted some of the stores that were in convenience zones and notified them that they needed to undertake CRV redemption. And the upshot is they told them, I think it was in a polite way, but basically go pound sand and nothing has happened. At that time, we did go through an exercise because the city asked if we could potentially operate some form of satellite collection facility. And so we went through the process of what would we need in terms of staffing and location and equipment and, you know, just kind of running the whole thing. And one of the things that we looked at included reverse vending machines. Reverse vending machine will run about $60,000 a year. And then we started looking more deeply into what Cal Recycle would require. And basically they require that a person be standing by in order to provide assistance to people if they need assistance with a reverse vending machine, or for some reason if it got blocked or jammed, that somebody is available on site in the immediate moment to address whatever that problem was. You know, at that point, it becomes very expensive to have the reverse vending machine in addition to some of the staffing levels. And, you know, we laid out a series of options for the city, and it would not be something that would be paid for by HWMA. We would have to charge the city directly for those costs because it was only for the benefit of one entity. It's just the way our JPA is set up, that no one entity is going to sort of tilt some of the costs for the authority. And you know, basically it was going to be, you know, $300,000 to $400,000 easily, and the city staff did not advance it any further than that. So we did go through that exercise to take a look, and Cal Recycle has not taken any action to any of the stores that are within that convenience zone, or those convenience zones that are unserved.
Okay. And then two more questions. Has there been any look at just offering less money for buyback?
We cannot do that.
Okay, I was wondering if that was
state law.
Right, gotcha. Interesting. And then I guess I'm just also curious, like I'm imagining, not literally, but anyway, I'm imagining like piles of nickels at counter cycle, you know, like all the people's nickels. Just, you know, I mean, I guess I'm just curious, like, what are they doing with this extra money? I mean, it's the people's money, right? You know, and nickels add up. So I don't know. I just feel like there's this, I don't know, like, do you have any knowledge about what's going on with this money that's not being returned?
That is an active and ongoing topic of conversation amongst different groups. There's a Protect CRV group, as well as I think it's called a Consumer Watchdog group. They're based out of the Orange County area. And, you know, their basic position is if Calorie Cycle is going to be collecting these funds and holding these funds, people are entitled to receiving their money back, and that money is not able to be conveniently provided. And so they've been some of the louder, I don't want to say critics, because they've been offering suggestions as to how to improve the program. Take a look at what's happening in Oregon and Michigan. And those state, they're not CRV, but those state redemption programs are not having the same problems that Calorie Cycle is having with our state redemption system. There was an attempt earlier this year to bring forward some legislation with the intent of helping to fix it. But honestly, the legislation that was proposed was basically a Band-Aid, and it ended up not getting out of committee. And it's, you know, then I know Rex doesn't want to hear it. Then the pandemic hit, and so everything just sort of, you know, went into suspension. So it has been disruptive, but Calorie Cycle was receiving a tremendous amount of pressure from recycling centers as well as trade organizations back in 2016, 2017, and it stepped up again. And then last summer, with the closure of over 300 Replanet recycling centers, the assumption was finally, this is what's going to drive Calorie Cycle to finally confront and wrestle with this antiquated system. And nothing has come forward.
Thanks. That's all my questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Leslie.
Wilson.
Yeah, I got a lot of things I can say, but I echo some of what Rex has said. You know, this on my own side, when I came into this story, I was on HWMA years ago, and then went off, and then I came back on. But at that time, there was a big shakeup with the Arcata Recycling Center, and Recycle was becoming worth a fortune, and everybody was fighting over it. They were offering surplus fees to get our recycling done in Riadell. It was just a great big deal. And then as the thing scaled down, it's not so much the pandemic, but it was just simply the nature of how this recycling was, because China wasn't burning this stuff like they had been. They weren't taking it, and before it was an easy fix. Just like many things that we've had in our world with blood. Blood was an easy fix until we had AIDS, and then you had to start getting creative in how you dealt with blood transfusion. And seemingly more and more that I listen to this, I hear that Calorie Cycle is, in my view, is the typical thing that the state of California does. They take and they use their ways to shove it back on the cities, and so whoever's left, somebody has to deal with garbage. Garbage is one of the 4 pillars that make a community work. And so if you don't deal with garbage, then you can't deal. And with the one thing that the pandemic has brought about is the dangers of people being affected by a really contaminated item, even if it wasn't pandemic, is a contaminated stuff. So I'm going to say, because we own it. I'd like to hear more. I'd like to hear more on it. And it's my hope would be that the entrepreneurial mindset of America would go out there and figure out a way to get into this and somebody can make $1 trying to get this CRV back. The other thing that I would suggest that we would suggest in a letter, if it's letters do any good, is that if the Recycle can't deal with the money, then they just need to suspend charging people for it for a period of time. If they're not, to sit on the money they got until they can deal with it, then they start charging. The only other question, I guess, one is some of the stuff that the effects of, I guess, as a question is how come the IV use syringes use disposal problem went down because we're not having the waste? Is that an easy answer?
Oh, yeah, there is unfortunately an easy answer. If when you come into our street on a regular basis, you become familiar with certain vehicles that are parked in proximity. And so as people are coming out of our facility, there are certain individuals who will park, and there's usually a back window that has been knocked out with a little modified slider, and they sell drugs through the windows.
Street
so
fair.
Yep. And so we do notify EPD. They are aware of the individuals, but unfortunately, it's that simple. I mean, we do have to call, for emergency services. But I want to make it really clear, that's going to be a segment of our customers. That's not all of our customers. Not everybody who's coming in is homeless. There are a lot of people who they have purchased their items, they simply want to redeem and get their 5 cents back, and it runs the gamut. With over 400 plus customers coming in a day, it's kind of like the great equalizer. You can come in your BMW, or you can come walking in with your cart behind you. Everybody is coming in order to redeem the money that they are rightfully owed. So I don't want to make it around, we have people who are just coming in, we're giving them money, and then they go out and purchase drugs. That's part of it, but it's not all of it.
Just two more quick comments. One is that I can hear from the gist of the conversation, and I don't know if that's the next item as well, about getting out of this RV and grabbing the space to do other things. And there's that doesn't seem congruent to me. The other thing, I just want to give a shout out to the employees that were smart enough to tell the state in Sacramento that I'm not coming to your meeting because you said I got to come to your meeting, and they didn't contract the virus as a result. And so go give them a attaboy because they earned one. That's all I had to say.
Well, Eric is one of our two. So Eric, I see you smiling.
Good job, Eric.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Elaine?
Yeah, I don't have anything. Everyone's comments have kind of covered my thoughts, so I'd be interested to move to the next item and continue the discussion.
And Sweeney.
yeah, the one question that comes to my mind is whether or not Jill, the rationale for making these exemptions. I mean, that seems to be the front line. You purchase something at a store and you come back and you get your deposit back, and it seems like those exemptions have contributed substantially to the collapse of the whole system. I mean, why? I'm just curious to know what rationale they use to determine the majority of the stores within the convenience zones exempt. I mean,
So what I
doesn't make
don't have a
to me.
sense of is whether or not there's a lifespan for the exemption period. So I don't know when the exemptions were given or what the landscape around that convenience zone looked like. So again, some of the examples that we were showing earlier, there were a number of recycling centers. So for instance, some of the stores that were located up in like the Safeway over in Harris and whatnot, they were served by the recycling center that was over at Redwood Acres. So I don't know if they periodically go back to evaluate whether or not those convenience zones are continuing to be served. And over time, they have closed. I do know that when Eel River Disposal closed their recycling center in Arcata, that opened up a couple of stores who are no longer served, and they did receive letters from Cal Recycle. The only reason that I know about it is because those store owners went to Arcata City staff, raised it as a concern, at which point we got folded in. I don't know if similar conditions have occurred in the Eureka area. I just don't know that.
And I'm also wondering, I understand you've met with Senator McGuire and other state elected officials about this, and the last word I heard from you is they said, we'll get back to you.
Well, we spoke with their staff. We didn't get a chance to speak with Senator McGuire. We spoke with the staff, and in all honesty, I think that there are just a number of really pressing issues. I'm certainly not taking it personal in any way, shape, or form that we haven't heard from them, but we have been folding them into the loop as we are circulating information or letters or anything else, making sure that they've got those.
Yeah. So what about the governor? Have we written any letters to the governor? Not that he has a lot of spare time to read.
We have not heard anything from the governor's office either.
Well, he extended the closures, right? Of the CRV.
He did, yeah, he did extend the closures. So CRV centers. So
Yeah.
Michael, I don't know what's happening with your audio feed, but it's, at least for me, is everybody else having difficulty with his feed? Your feed has gotten really warbly, so we're not hearing you.
It's got weird.
It's not?
He's talking. He's talking in cursive.
You may want to try reconnecting real quick.
Oh, all right.
Well, Jill's has been doing it. I can't hear Jill sometime either. So.
That's what happens when we live out in the boondocks.
Sometimes.
I'll see if I can do anything on my side.
So, Michael, I would encourage if board members have completed their comments or questions to open it up to the public.
Yes. Okay. Any comments from the public on this issue? Hearing none or seeing none.
Could I?
Linda Wise.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Linda.
Yeah, I want to echo some of the things that Jill said. Right now in the current situation, one of the other things that I will add to this is the way that the state law has changed recently with regard to workers' compensation has also added another layer of risk for people who are having buyback facilities on the same locations where they do other activities. So, the responsibility for people who may go out sick or, these kind of things is an added cost and pressure for us. I do want to say we as Recology are wanting to work toward a solution that's not going to leave people high and dry. And I realize it's going to take time because the state is, they're slow pokes. And we're going to try and work with HWMA and Humboldt Sanitation and the rest of the state to try to make a solution that's going to be workable for the rest of the county. And hopefully, whatever we can do and add to the situation, we'll do it. But right now, the way that it stands in the facilities where we currently did operate the recycling buyback centers, I don't see where we can start them again. I'm sorry, my husband fed the dogs at the same time and I got a little distracted.
Okay. So any final comments or questions from the board? Is my audio any better, Jill?
It is better.
Oh, good. I did reconnect. Okay, so that was a information item, no actions required, so there's not going to be any vote. And the next item on our agenda is the Hawthorne Transfer Station, Eureka Recycling Center, and Cumming Roads Landfill level of service and staffing scenarios. So that's back to you, Jill.
Great, thank you. I do have another slide, but I'm going to go ahead and just walk you all through it. And I realize that my walking you through it, even though you've likely gone through detailed in the staff report, is also for the benefit of the folks that are viewing or will be viewing these activities. So staff is recommending the board approve proposed levels of service and staffing, which is going to be necessary to maintain services at the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station and the Cummings Road Landfill, as well as operations at the Hazardous Waste Facility and the Eureka Recycling Center with reduced hours. And we are reluctantly recommending that the board suspend CRV buyback activities until further notice due to the economic and safety cost considerations. As we discussed in the previous agenda item, HWMA employees are handling waste and recyclable materials in operations, and they're responsible for maintaining the environmental systems at the Cummings Road landfill. And they are playing a critical and essential role in ensuring the protection of public and environmental health and protecting our workforce during this public health emergency while ensuring that trash is properly handled is crucial. Prior to the pandemic, our staffing needs to support the activities performed at the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station and the Cummings Road Landfill required the equivalent of 36.5 full-time positions. And that enabled us to have a 7-day-a-week coverage at the transfer station and the Eureka Recycling Center, as well as 6-day-a-week coverage at the Hazardous Waste Facility, serving both residential and small quantity generators, and 5 days per week coverage at the business office and the Cummings Road landfill. The COVID-19 related restrictions imposed by state and elected officials to reduce the transmission of the disease has limited our operations to the provision of essential services and essential workers. And as the state and local officials are beginning to relax these restrictions, it's occurring at a time when the risks posed by COVID are increasing. And we have been searching for, the ability to balance so that we can safely reopen our facilities and our services to those non-essential services and still ensure the protection of our employees and the public. Some of what I've got in the staff report is somewhat redundant with the previous staff item, but I simply want to acknowledge again, we do have employees who are unable currently to work simply because they are at higher risk of contracting the coronavirus, or they are employees that have child care coverage issues, and we have been providing them accommodations. Additionally, in the early months of the pandemic, we did have some employees who were required to self-isolate following possible exposure, and or they were experiencing symptoms consistent with COVID-19. Thankfully, none of them were actually contracted COVID-19, but honestly, that was early on, and we didn't have access to the testing capabilities. So we had to err on the side of caution and retain them at home. As time is going on, people are wanting to have vacations. We've been kind of managing that, and we do unfortunately have folks that are having to go to family gatherings such as funerals, and I'm not going to tell somebody that they can't go to a funeral. As non-essential services, the Eureka Recycling Center and the CRV buyback activities were suspended, as were hazardous waste collection. We did resume limited acceptance of hazardous waste generated from small businesses in late April, and those have been by appointment only. And I do want to note that while we are receiving 170 tons of discarded and used materials at the transfer station, and some of that material could be handled by people who've been affected by COVID. Our standard waste handling procedures generally are going to protect employees from having direct contact with garbage. And we've made a whole series of modifications so that we could ensure social distancing, limited personal interactions, and a host of other protective measures, including PPE, and all designed, in addition with sanitation, all designed to help protect our employees and the public. Whereas the Eureka Recycling Center CRV buyback activities were suspended simply because they posed a higher threat to exposure of the virus and our ability to perform our essential solid waste handling services in the event of employees' illness. CRV buyback activities do entail direct handling, such as weighing of the baskets that people have been handling, as well as for some people, if they bring in 10 containers, then we're handling them directly, as well as those cash payouts. The hazardous waste facility is accepting the material from residential and small business as noted, and we are looking forward to being able to resume our regular acceptance of that. Currently, we just have a lack of available staffing. And that is in part because of the aforementioned high-risk individuals or lack of people who have childcare, but we also had to take two transfer station personnel. Initially, they were assigned and trained to ensure that we had coverage. We only have two people who are assigned to the landfill on our regular scheduling. And the concern, of course, is if one person gets sick, the other person might get sick, and then we have nobody to operate the landfill and the environmental systems. So what we did is we took those two individuals, separated them, brought in the two people from the transfer station, so that we now have them fully trained and capable as these two working units, and so they now rotate. Now, at the same time, shortly after we did that, we started encountering some difficulties with the flare, and the flare was shutting down on a daily basis. Simply put, we're not seeing the methane generation that the system had been originally designed for. And we knew that that was going to happen. We just didn't know when, because we didn't really have a solid idea of the composition of the material that was placed into the landfill all these years ago. So what that has resulted in is the landfill operation now requiring 7 days a week coverage as staff is monitoring the methane extraction and destruction system. And until today, we have had frequent flare shutdowns, and there have just been an ongoing series of mechanical failures because the system really wasn't designed so that it would run, shut down, and it's hard shut down, and then we start it back up. And so we've been doing a lot of work, and Tony, to his credit, has probably becoming a bit of a guru that he was not expecting to be in terms of how to be handling the system. But we are spending an inordinate amount of time right now to ensure that that environmental system is being properly managed, and we are working closely with the air district and on that one. So as we're looking at restoration of services, we've assessed the staff which is necessary to resume the non-essential services in this current setting. And that includes maintaining 7-day-a-week coverage at the transfer station and the Cummings Road landfill, 5 days a week for the Eureka Recycling Center, providing only non-CRV recycling services, and to resume the residential and business hazardous waste collection activities. Employees will remain in designated working groups with no or minimal overlap, and implementation of measures to reduce the potential for coronavirus transmission. As noted with the Cummings Road landfill, we are asking the board not kind of for a formal action, but it's more that you're aware that we're asking that you internally allocate 2 full-time material diversion technicians from the transfer station to the landfill, so that we have adequate coverage to ensure the operations of the environmental systems. With the transfer station and the Eureka Recycling Center, the overall available staffing has been temporarily decreased by 4 with the assignment of those 2 employees, as well as a high-risk employee and a vacancy due to resignation. We've been recruiting for that replacement. But the remaining staffing does provide basic solid waste management services. But I do want to note that when we have an employee who is out for any reason, that does result in the director of operations hopping onto the loader and spending the day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it may be, in order to provide that operational coverage. So it does restrict our management team then. Again, we handle 170 tons per day with no change in facility hours. And we are continuing to receive public self-haul, the franchise, the contractor waste, and we are performing all of the diversion activities that we have previously done, in addition to accepting a number of the materials that have been accepted historically from the Eureka Recycling Center. We're now taking them over at the transfer station. So to perform all of that and load the trailers requires a minimum of 6 employees, which are assigned to the tip floor daily, Monday through Friday. And on Saturdays and Sundays, we are able to reduce that number to a minimum of 4 staff members, because we're not handling the degree of franchise waste, because there's simply no franchise collection on the weekends. I think we might get one out of Southern Humboldt, but that's usually on early Saturday morning. For the Eureka Recycling Center, we are proposing to continue with our source separated materials and to reduce our operations from 7 days per week to 5 days per week, so that we can minimize the need to hire additional personnel and to allow the authority to accept that source separated recyclable materials, the appliances, e-waste, TV, to dismantle the appliances and prepare various items for shipping and baling and transportation loading with the remaining 8 employees. And again, we are looking at spending the 7 days a week of CRV buyback services. So we're asking that the board approve the reduction of the 2 material diversion technicians from the transfer station for reallocation up to the landfill, and that we would resume the Eureka Recycling Center activities on a 5-day per week schedule with suspension of CRV buyback activities. We are not proposing any changes in terms of increased or decreased staffing needs for the hazardous waste facility. We do have those individuals who have been currently assigned there. One person has been temporarily assigned to backfill a vacant position on the tip floor, and another one has been assigned to a position in the scale house. And then we've had our one of our employees use about 25% of her time in order to provide coverage for satellite collection services and processing of the business waste. A 5-day-a-week operation with no change in facility hours will enable us to provide full service to residences and businesses with no changes in personnel. Same thing with the scale house. Our overall staffing requirement is 5.5 FTE in order to provide the level of customer service related to the weight, data collection, and process the charges associated with solid waste and Eureka Recycling Center, and to accommodate the employees with childcare needs and or who have been out on leave due to family emergencies. We did bring in a temporary extra help individual to help provide for some coverage there. We are not proposing to make any changes to our scale house. With our main business office, we do have some space constraints in terms of the ability to meet social distancing recommendations in the main business office. We have 4 people who are assigned, well, we technically have 5 people who have been assigned to work in there. And so we have been trying to stagger the coverage over the course of the week, so that we typically have 2, no more than 3 people working in close proximity in an enclosed environment with each other. Same thing with the HWMA managers. We are all rotating 7 days a week on-site coverage. We conduct regular conference calls and telework to ensure minimal interactions with each other, because we want to make sure that all of our vendors get paid. We want to make sure that the employees get paid, and somebody's got to be able to process the invoices and the checks. So we've been not interacting with each other so as to ensure that there is a decision tree that has remained intact. And we recognize that nothing has happened right now. We've been kind of sailing along the last 4 months. That doesn't mean that something's not going to happen. And so we've tried to structure all of our operations so that we are buffered and we are able to minimize any sort of an impact. And hopefully nobody gets sick. So If the board opts not to decrease CRV buyback services, then the board is going to need to identify and provide us some direction as to the number of additional employees that you're willing to have brought in, and whether or not those employees should be full-time or part-time with corresponding benefits that are offered. At this juncture, our recommendation will have a slight reduction of services, but there would be no increase to the budget. If you flow down the agenda item, we did lay out some alternatives for your consideration, because we know that this is a really difficult conversation to have. It is not one that we're enjoying having to present to you, or at least I'm certainly not enjoying having to present it to you, because I know it's really difficult. And we recognize that recycling and handling of solid waste and all of our diversion programs has been something that this entity has been committed to and has grown very successfully. The CRV buyback, in large part because of the economic drivers, has just really weighed our services down, and it's just simply been kind of tilted over with the pandemic. So we do have 3 recommendations. The first one is to resume partial Eureka Recycling Center and CRV buyback services, and that would be at 5 days a week. We are not supporting this option because of the challenge of ensuring that non-essential employees remain in separate work groups to prevent interaction with our essential employees at this time, specifically around our core operations. That being said, we would need to hire an additional 3 employees in order to perform those CRV buyback activities, because what we know is that there is a tremendous backlog of material that people have in their laundry rooms and storage units, not storage units, but if you got some sort of a storage unit out behind your house or something like this, we are well aware of a pent-up demand for the services. We are going to have people who can provide assistance with traffic control and performing sanitizing of the collection containers. I'm not referring to the actual bottles, I'm referring to the baskets that everything gets put in, because people are going to be handling it, and so we want to make sure that they are being routinely disinfected, as well as other commonly touched areas, and to assist in handling the increased material volumes. We will not be having people sort their materials on our facility the way that it has been done historically. People are going to have to come to our facility like they are with many others now, where everything has to be pre-sorted. And if your items are not pre-sorted before you're coming into our facility, we're going to be having to send people out of the facility where they can sort their materials. And that's going to be a change for folks. But I do want to know that these 3 additional employees are above and beyond the 8 employees that we currently have, and it's going to require recruitment and hiring for those positions. The estimated fully encumbered cost for those additional personnel is going to be an additional $200,000 annually, and that's going to need to either come from an increase to our waste management fee or from our authority reserves. We will likely need to secure extra help so that we could handle the anticipated influx of customers who are going to be coming into our facility. We're going to have to do some work with the city of Eureka, because right now garbage customers are routinely backing up onto Hawthorne Street and sometimes out to Broadway. And if we're opening up and essentially doubling the traffic that is coming into our facility, we could have some real challenges. We did talk briefly about potentially opening up some alternative pop-up type locations where we could help to alleviate some of the overflow there. We would need to have additional personnel to staff and handle and transport material back to the transfer station or the recycling center for our baler. So that's one option for 5 days a week. The second option that we have is to resume full Eureka Recycling Center and CRV buyback centers services, to 7 days a week. We are not supporting that option either, again, due to the challenge of ensuring that non-essential employees are remaining in separate work groups and in order to prevent interactions with our core operations. That said, anticipated staffing need for CRV buyback would require an additional 6 full-time equivalent positions to provide coverage 7 days a week, with an anticipated cost of about $400,000, which again would need to come either from an increase to our waste management fee or from the authority reserves. I want to note that these full-time equivalent positions would actually be a series of part-time employees, just because of the way we've been trying to stagger these individual work groups. And the same consideration as far as temporary extra help would be necessary to help handle the influence of customers' on-site outreach, traffic control, and to assist with material handling for an undetermined period of time. The third alternative that we have for the board is continued closure of the Eureka Recycling Center until the COVID threat has passed. We're not recommending that either, because there is a significant demand for recycling services related to source separated recyclable materials, appliances, e-waste, flat screens, and the need to process collected materials from the tip floor. And, you know, mattresses alone, we are receiving better than 990 tons annually of mattresses that are coming on. So, you know, when we talk about the 1,000 tons of CRV, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty equivalent to some of our more specialized, you know, items that we have. And CRV materials can still be recycled. The issue is the payout again. So I don't know that I need to. Oh, actually, there is. So to be more, to kind of expand a little bit on our recommendation, that, you know, we would be suspending the CRV buyback activities until further notice due to the economic and safety cost consideration. And then there would be obviously the reassignment of the 2 diversion technicians from the transfer station to the landfill, and that we would adjust our level of service as infection rates and staffing permits for an undetermined period of time. Again, the recommendation that we've presented to the board would result in no overall staffing increase or decrease. And that concludes my presentation, and I accidentally shut my computer here. So we are willing to take on some questions. I am going to ask Tyler and Eric and potentially Tony to be ready to respond to any specific questions that board members may have.
Hey, thank you, Jill. So using the roll call, and Tyler, can you?
I can, Chair. Just so you know, you are turning into a robot again. We might put you into the waiting room and then bring you back and see if that helps load things up a little bit. But we will get to you last, as is the way to go on these lists. Where are you? I'm gonna move you real quick. Don't be scared.
So we're taking like a 2-minute break. Is that it, Tyler?
I'm hoping that this is less than 30 seconds. I'm hoping that he just joins right back in.
I'm better appreciating all the challenges that the various news stations have had in interviewing people and the quality of video feed or audio.
Michael, if we could just test you real quick.
Yes. Okay. So I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Sophia likes it. Yeah.
If you're ready for me, I will head down the list for board.
Very good. Thank you.
Boom.
I like to anyway. On the recycling part of it, Jill, with the 456 visits and everything else, and probably everybody, most people around here, some of them are too young to remember, but with a proper amount of education, could we take in CRV buybacks on certain days, A through M, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then that cuts down your flow half. It's going to take a little bit of time to train people and get people going, but once you do that, you won't have that large of influx, and people could tie their garbage into it. But that way, you'd have both days hit on a weekend. It's going to be inconvenient for some of the people on Sunday, but I think for some of the people, I mean, that's one way to look at it. And Frank was right. I mean, we were pretty happy when, you know, we got the tonnage down from $158 a ton from, or $68 a ton from AC, and then brought it over, and they came down to 10. We went to, you know, however it worked out. So I just, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm getting a lot of calls. I don't know if it's our given right to do this and stay after recycle. I have talked with McGuire and Woods, and it's really great. This is not only an issue with Humboldt County, believe it or not, guys. Sonoma, I've talked with the guys over in the valley. Everybody's having some pretty big issues with it. And a lot of people think it's a big part of their recycling to get that recycling back. They're still recycling. I mean, when they call, they're really happy. Says, "Oh no, you can still recycle it. We're just not going to pay you."
Right.
I mean, and you know, it kind of goes over on deaf ears. So I'm just saying, I know there are costs involved. I know that the COVID's going to add all these employees and stuff, but till we get this cycled out, I wouldn't bring on an employee. I'd go through, you know, Express or whatever, you know, one of these hiring firms, and bring in some people part-time on, you know, to actually handle that part of it, and still provide the service, because the service still has to be provided. And I still think, and I know Linda's, I think, still on here, but I still think maybe we need to maybe work with Recology a little bit more, and basically ask them, yeah, I mean, they've got how many locations? How is it working in other locations? And is there really a light at the end of the tunnel? But it looks like everything on here is, we don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. And I don't think I can't buy into that. So, I mean, but I'm on the backside of a lot of boats, so I'm good with it. But it seems to me we can be a little more creative and bring these people in, and, you know, basically just stagger them, you know.
So it's a good suggestion. The challenge for us is that we handle a much higher volume than either Humboldt Sanitation or Recology's operation down in Fortuna and Redway. So if they remain closed, then we're the only game in town. So our demand again goes up, and that is part of, you know, how we're all trying to navigate what we know is going to be a surge. So absolutely, we could do that. The fact is the demand far exceeds what we are doing now. We're constantly having to turn people away at the gate at the end of the day now, as it is. I do want to note that when we are talking about ACRC and some of the processing of the curbside materials, and when there were discussions around cost per ton at that juncture, that was for mixed recyclables running through a MRF. That's not what this is. This is specific to source separated CRV buyback, and it's to provide the payout to the public that have redeemed their monies, and then again we are recouping that through the sale of commodities, which are continuing to decrease. So so I do want to make sure that we separate, you know, recyclables in terms of source, the Eureka recycling versus the curbside, and the fact that we've been having to charge people at the curb in addition to the CRV. I mean, we've done a fantastic job of making a really complicated system, whereas I think my personal edification on the whole thing is that when the program was funded in 1986, we did not have curbside collection programs. And the objective was trying to incentivize people to recycle this material. We now have recycling centers that can take this material. We now have curbside collection where the material is getting sorted and processed, and people want to recycle. And it would seem to me that Calorie Cycle, it would be better and more beneficial to be taking the money that the state is using to subsidize their program. Because again, you pay your 5 cents, you get your 5 cents. There is a huge bureaucratic organization that is drawing from the state general fund to ensure their operations of oversight of this program, in addition to the recycling centers that are having to subsidize the operations to make sure that people are getting their 5 cents for every container and bottle that they present forward. And if we could be getting more people to be recycling at their curbside, because almost every community, certainly here, with the exception of some of the far outer areas, could be participating in curbside collection. And I think the overall cost would probably be a little bit less. But in terms of looking at alternative days, that is certainly something that we could take a look at. I do see that there could be some real challenges around that, but and you're right.
There's challenges. Look at the challenges as opportunities, as somebody said. I got a question for Eric, if he's still on here.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
How much of our mattress are brought in by commercial customers compared to residential? So how much does Living Styles, more Sleep World, do they bring truckloads in, or is a percentage breakdown to residential?
So it's about a 60-40 split. Residential is 60%, and Recology, so franchise haulers and commercial, is about 40% of our total volume.
But those are all materials that are coming from residents that they've picked up. So when you buy a mattress from Living Style and they remove your old mattress, that was a residential. They're providing a delivery service.
I'm just saying, do they come in what's the difference between Joe just went to Costco and bought himself a mattress compared to Betty went to Living Styles? Because Living Styles doesn't break them down to us one at a time, do they?
No. So Living Styles normally will give 10 to 15 per truckload, whereas residents normally bring 1 up to 4 for box springs and stuff like that.
And what's the turnaround rate from receiving them to bundling them?
Rex, you cut out. Did you want to repeat that for me?
What's the turnaround time from getting the initial mattress to the time it's bundled?
Less than a week.
I'm just trying to think if you could move that somewhere to create, that takes up a lot of the room. All right, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Rex.
Herrera.
Okay, so I would like for us to find some way to maintain some level of CRV buyback service. Has there been any evaluation? I recognize that given the high demand, this may or may not have been looked at, but doing, even just like once a week, 1 day a month, reservation, like people can make reservations or make appointments in advance. Has any of those options been considered? And
So
what
we've because of the volume that we're currently receiving, it doesn't appear to be viable, because we're just going to have people who are angry that they're unable to get into an appointment. Where so that's one of the big concerns. Linda and myself will be having a meeting next week to see if this other group might be interested in taking on something, or maybe there's some form of modified service that they could assist us with in handling some of the CRVs. So we've been trying to throw everything onto the table. I don't know that having limited buyback service is really the way it's going to go. I think it's going to have to be all or nothing, because just simply because of the volume of customers that come in.
Sure, I guess that's why I also brought up the idea of an appointment system.
Mm-hmm.
So saying, this, this day of the month or this day of the week, you can make an appointment in advance. We're only accepting so many people for that day, and it's first come, first serve for making appointments. So it wouldn't be able to meet all of the demand that's out there, obviously, but it would at least be a way to get some of that taken care of, perhaps.
It is something that we could certainly take a look at.
Yeah, for me, I think doing an indefinite amount of time of suspending CRV buyback, that's not something that I'd be willing to support at this time. But I think if we were to explore doing, a 60 to 90 day suspension with either some, 1 day a week or once a month type program getting implemented sometime during that period, and just trialing that out and seeing what we can learn from that. I think that's worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some of my thoughts on that. I'm sure my colleagues will have other suggestions, but that's kind of where I'm at. I understand the need to scale back and the pressures that are influencing that. But I also recognize the pressures that are out in the community and the need for CRV buyback and how we can try and find some balance in a situation that's obviously very imbalanced.
Okay, thank you, Sophia.
Castellano.
Let's see. Few questions. How much requests from the public are you getting for CRV buyback? Like
every day at the scale house, at the transfer station, emails, phone calls, Facebook messages, people who have my phone number from way back when.
Yeah.
Everybody is wanting. The fellow who's sitting across the room from me would like to know too.
we sell our recycling.
Right.
I mean, so I get it. Yeah, and I guess another question is, I mean, for sure, it seems like there will still be a while yet of needing to make considerations due to the pandemic. Is there a concern that once, let's say the CRV buyback doesn't happen, right now you're kind of in a special employment arrangement due to the pandemic. So like, will those employees be out of work once things kind of return to normal, whatever, that means?
I don't see that happening because we have such a large volume of material that is coming in, and the need to be processing things. There's not a lot of downtime, at all within the facility as it is right now. So yeah, that's been less of a concern. If anything, we could do a better job of sort of sorting and processing some of the materials that we're currently receiving. So no, we're not looking at any sort of reduction of services right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I guess in terms of, do you want our personal opinions now, or should we open it up for and then come back around for that?
I'll defer to the chair.
Yeah, just go ahead and say your truth. Speak your truth.
Well, I'll say some of it. No, I'm kidding. It's hard. I really feel like, I think Member Wilson spoke to it well of where the local community is really put in a difficult situation because of problems at the state level. And then we see like this, HWMA Recology in particular, like having to, kind of operate this system at a loss, financial loss. but the system does provide a service that a lot of people in our community are asking for. I don't know, I mean, I definitely think that I would be fine with staff's recommendation, while the pandemic limitations are still in place. I mean, I guess maybe one more question though is like, this seems like a system that's been kind of breaking down for a while, and I don't know, I guess I just like, I'm not getting the sense that it's going to change, but then, or I guess I'm curious from your perspectives, like, do you think that there's like what might be the possibility for change if we stop sort of, helping keep it alive, like helping keep this kind of failed practice alive?
So, a couple thoughts, one, and I kind of want to address, so Rex, when I was putting together all of these staff reports, I can't begin to tell you how much angst I've had in the course of developing this, because many of you who have worked with me over a number of years, obstacles, hurdles, barriers, whatever, we're going to find the sweet spot. We're going to be able to figure out how to make it work. This is the first time that I'm having to come to you saying, we're really struggling. We don't have an easy fix. And it's been really hard not to be able to find the sweet spot that's going to be able to remedy this problem. And this one does not have an identifiable fix for HWMA because it's a state program, which segues into your question, Leslie, which is essentially, will our action or inaction do anything to change the state? I don't think so, because as Rex noted, community leaders throughout the state are saying we have an antiquated system and it's broken and it's not working. Monterey Solid Waste Authority, which handles in a day what we take in a month, has said we can't do CRV buyback anymore because of the cost that has been ongoing. And the fact is that we are subsidizing and charging our solid waste customers almost $10, a ton to support the overall Eureka Recycling Center, activities. And I readily acknowledge that's for a whole litany of different things, not just CRV, but we are also subsidizing it, at the curb also. So there's a lot that is happening, and we desperately need the state, and we desperately need our elected officials to be putting pressure onto the state and onto the governor. And this is the worst time to be trying to do that because they have far more pressing things. So I don't have an easy answer for this one. And that's very frustrating for me. Very frustrating.
I'm sure.
And so the reason that we have this before you all is this is a political decision, and it's a fiscal decision. It's beyond what our staff is able to do right now. So we are looking to all of you to provide us that direction and provide us some blessings as far as where are we going and handling this.
I mean, I think just to kind of thank you for that. And, I definitely feel you. I mean, again, I'm personally not happy about, but fine with, staff's recommendation. But I would kind of like to see, I mean, again, I think just my sense of responsibility to the public, again, to revisit this again, and does that sound painful? And like maybe run the numbers on board member Pereira's idea, and just kind of continue to see if there's might be other possibilities that we can look at.
We could certainly do that. I do want to note that the governor underneath the executive order is has CRV centers allowed to be closed until about August 20th, unless of course he extends it again. So that's, you know, the one benchmark that we need to take a look at. The other is the fact that we do not have certification right now, and that certification is going to require attendance at this pre-cert. They actually call it a voucher, but we have to do a pre-cert. And right now, Cal Recycle is not willing to consider virtual trainings. You know, so we would be potentially sending employees into a county that has a higher transmission rate currently. So we could certainly take it up again in September, because maybe the world has changed a little bit. It will also give us an opportunity to finish some of the modifications. You know, we're going to have contractors coming out onto our site. They're scheduled to come in, I think, the third week of July, maybe the end of July. So those are some things that we need to take care of also. We don't meet in August, and so we put this together so that you guys could all have an opportunity to be aware, because I know that you're getting a lot of questions from the general public, and so we're giving you a lot of information.
I definitely don't want to compromise employee safety. So for sure, I would not suggest that anyone travel to a training to make this happen. You know, and I mean, I would also say, like, it seems like the board could write a letter together, you know, like we could all write a letter together, and also have our respective communities write letters also in the meantime.
To who?
Just in terms of making some efforts as a group.
So Rex, what she's referring to is sending a letter to essentially, you know, Cal Recycle and the governor and likely state representatives who may be able to address some of the legislative need to examine the system. I'm paraphrasing.
Great idea if you think somebody will read them, but I don't think anybody's reading our letters this time of year with everything that's going on, because they like to mention COVID 11 times too to avoid stuff. So
this is not a COVID issue.
I know, I understand.
Yeah.
I support that. Thank you.
Okay, next on the list, Tyler.
Wilson.
Well, is it Wilson?
That's you, Frank.
You know, I've been listening to this, and you're trying to find an answer. The staff's not really recommending much of anything other than that we don't. I guess we don't do any buyback for a period of time. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct.
I looking at the short-term answers is one that we don't do it for the month or whatever the time frame we're waiting for the governor to lift his next decree. Secondly, they're writing letters is a waste of time. Nobody's going to read any letters. And one of them, my question would be: do we have any of those self-dumping vans?
Self-dumping vans?
Yeah, well, you know, we have the big chip truck ones that dump stuff.
Walking floors.
Oh, the walking floor?
Yeah.
Trailers?
Yes, I think that's what he's talking about. Walking floors.
Walking floors, you're correct, Rex. My suggestion would be to, instead of writing a letter, you could write a letter that you could take to the top of the pile, but I'd load one of those things up and drive it down to Cal Recycle or Governor Newstrom's office and pull in the front yard and run the thing out backwards, and put all the recycled CRV on the front lawn. And we're only what you say Monterey does a month's worth of our stuff in a day. So the state of California has a major problem, and I don't have a solution. One, for the people that I hate to say it to, I know what we did. If the recycle is not breaking my bank, I mean, I'd like to get my nickel back, but I can also just put it in my recycle bin and call it good. Time I spend the money for the gas and to go down and sort it and bag it, We just throw it in the recycle bin now, except for the cans because they don't take up that much space. But one is just suggest to the people to do that for the next month or two. I don't believe we need to spend money to hire people. I don't need to open up the doors. We certainly don't need to go to out of the county and go to some school because the people that won't respond to us won't do a virtual when everybody else in the state of California is doing virtual meetings. And Rio Dell asked to go back to city council meetings, and the state or the county health people said that was a no. So whatever. I guess civil disobedience and dump a chipload of recyclable busted up glass on the front lawn would be my alternative to the answer.
I would support that. I mean, I think that would
too. Yeah. Political action, it's called.
I'd rather let
It gets attention. I mean, is what we see. What it takes to make a statement, and we're all in it together. So rather than hang in there, we're either hanging in there ourselves or we hang together. So just take it down and do it. Enough of my comment.
Hogan.
Okay, where to go with all of that? I definitely am not comfortable with suspending it for just an undetermined time period, although I do understand that it's a larger issue and we don't have a solution for it. Yeah, so if we could put, I don't know, a 60 or a 90-day time period on it, although I know we're ineligible, in August if we don't go down and get the license or whatever. So basically anything we do isn't going to be in compliance, right? If we don't have people that are trained and certified in person in Sacramento by whatever, well, right now it's what, August 9th or August 20th, then
we can't
and if
open.
the governor doesn't, right, then we couldn't open. Yeah.
Yeah, you're required to have a voucher in order to do the sales, or not the sales, but the transactions, excuse me. So it has to be, there's a voucher and you go through that process. So if you don't have it, even if you want to, you can't do it. The state will fine you for operating a center that is not certified. They're real good about contacting you about a complaint or anything else, but when we have asked for assistance, it's fallen on deaf ears. I do want to note, I appreciate the 60 to 90 day sort of period. Realistically, and I think that many of you are probably receiving updates from OES, or at least people within your organization. We know this isn't done in 60 to 90 days. We are looking at 1 year to 2 years, and that is the reason that I have that recommendation for the undetermined period. If it appears that infection rates are going down in Humboldt County, and of course, that falls in line with the health department's plan that was approved by the state. If we are seeing that number stabilize or decrease, that would fundamentally change how we are looking at things also. So even though we may continue to see coronavirus within the country, as well as maybe the state, if locally we are seeing it get under control, that helps to provide some, indication of comfort level for how we're handling things. That's not what we're seeing right now. Cases are on the increase, and we probably won't have a sense until the next couple of weeks what has transpired post July 4th weekend. As well as the ongoing gatherings that people are undertaking. And it's a really difficult landscape. Again, it's not affecting our essential services in terms of our operations because it's all being handled primarily through heavy equipment or other automated type functions. The Eureka Recycling Center, in terms of many of the activities that are there, people come in, they put it in bins, pins are picked up through forklifts, and it's all handled primarily with automated equipment. So that's why we're not recommending that the Eureka Recycling Center remain closed. You know, we're saying we want to open the Eureka Recycling Center so we can resume those activities because we believe we can do that safely and protect our employees. CRV buyback just requires a higher degree of person-to-person contact, and we can't. It's more difficult for us to maintain that that separation. I do want to circle back and not overlook a comment around increasing staffing. You know, we are recruiting right now, and we only have 6 people apply. We're going to be going through the interview process pretty soon. With the ongoing unemployment benefits and the bonus unemployment benefits, we just did not see a lot of people apply, even though we know that the unemployment rate is pretty high right now. Going to Express Personnel or any other independent employer, we actually pay them considerably more. It adds about 30% to the cost because, you know, so I want to let you know that we're trying to come up with something which is going to be mindful of cost and still get us to the same point of being able to staff whatever the board is asking us to do.
But anyway, okay.
You still awake, Tyler?
I am here. Michael, you've become a robot again, so I'm going to put you out in the waiting room and reconnect you again, and then it's your turn.
Yes.
And while Michael is out for the room for the moment, I do want to express my appreciation to all of you, you know, for you know, spending the time and obviously just the thoughtfulness as we're trying to navigate this. This, as I noted, is very uncharacteristic for me, and just needed to fold you into the loop and figure out a way that we could all be working on finding a solution, which is amenable to some degree. You're back.
Hey, good. Well, I think from what I've heard in discussions I've had with Jill, my feeling is this is Cal Recycle's problem, not ours. I think Cal Recycle is being irresponsible, getting back to the certification training and not just proactively going, we're going to do this through video conference because of the pandemic. That's irresponsible. So as I understand it, currently the governor has suspended CRV through August 20th. I would think the chances of him extending that again would be rather likely. I'm comfortable with you know, the undetermined time period, recognizing that it's not like forever. It's until Bill pointed out, we feel like the health conditions in the county are such that we can, if we so choose, operate, you know, safely. But in the meantime, I also support not sending staff to a gathering of people indoors. And so we won't be certified to do it anyway. So if it were just me, and short of maybe Frank's idea, which I think has lots of merit, I would push back and I'd just say, hey, you know, you guys created this problem and now you're expecting counties and cities and operators like HWMA and Ecology to fix their problem. And I again, I don't think it's our problem to fix. So let's see.
Oh, you may want to receive public comment.
Yes, that was what I was going to do next. Are there any additional comments from the public at this point in time?
Probably take them a bit to get their microphones on mute. Linda, were you wanting to address this?
I want to echo some of the things, thank you, Jill, that were said earlier. I think, what Rex was saying, this is, probably a time for growth and for change of this regulation. I would love to take an end dump down there and put it on their lawn, but unfortunately I have Recology's name on it. We had more to stake. But I really think that perhaps out of this time, maybe something good will come out of it. And also keep in mind that some of the other communities are going to be coming up with some other regulations that 1383 that are coming up. I'm sure you've heard about before. And it is just such a strange law that runs counter to people bringing CRV buyback materials into a buyback center. Here's this 1383 that's about climate change and solid waste and having solid waste collected at the curbside, and then the same organization is also encouraging people to drive individual cars down for CRV buyback. I think right now, with what's going on right now, is a way to crack this open so more can happen. So perhaps this will be a better thing. Like I said, find a solution. I've got another 5 years. I'm ready to help with the Humboldt County. Nothing crazy with you, but try.
I got a note from Leslie asking if everybody can mute their mics. And Leslie, I think everybody is muted. Linda, you were breaking up, so I think she was trying to find a way to address that. One thing, Linda, you have brought up to me, and I know that we've talked a little bit with Tasha about this. You're in a unique position because you're also running the MRF. And the role that CRV material plays in the material composition, which is collected at the curb. So you might want to address that, because that is another component which kind of feeds into your 1383.
Yeah, one of the things, 1383 is basically a mandate for local agencies, an unfunded mandate, to provide curbside collection for recycling organics and garbage. Some communities are going to be able to be out of that mandate, and it's going to be coming effect on January 2022. How we're going to be able to afford that is going to be the big question. And right now with the CRV, what's another problem that's happened that's fallen into the mix is CRV, when it's paid into the state, if it's collected at the curbside, we put in what you were asking before, Leslie, about processing to become a processor. We put in for redemption from that redemption value, and we apply it toward processing. So it is part of the component for processing for recycling at the curbside. That money is not lost to the state. So if we were to have a total collapse of CRV in the system, then all of a sudden, if that money isn't there for curbside programs, that creates another problem. So this is cracking open a bigger egg than just having a CRV buyback for people to bring in their redemptions. That I think, at least CRV is something that's noticeable, and maybe we'll open up some conversations that are going to be working toward some good solutions.
Through
And I don't know.
I mean, I think until this thing we're going through, I mean, I think Tang out of San Francisco, I think I think he's an assemblyman, and then Senator Fraser. I think there were two from each house working on a revamping of the bottle bill's 30 years old and has had very little revamping done to it in 30 years. And I come from an era where we never had cans. Everything was in bottles, and I spent 4 hours every Saturday morning for about 8 years sorting bottles in my dad's grocery store. That was my job. So they all, you had to take them so each person could take them. But when bottles came on, that's when they want to get their chunk of the change. I think what they're going to do, and they used to get pretty good redemption value from the glass back then. Well, from what I understand in the state's fashion and how they like to do things, they're going to put most of this recycling program back on the beverage and industry that's providing all of this and have them come up with a plan, is from what I understand and what I've been hearing in Sacramento. And I don't know if, Joe, you're hearing anything different or anything like that, but that's where I think it's going to end up going. Because I mean, it's just, and I liked Sophia's idea to a certain point to making appointments, but you got to understand where most of the people are pretty responsible that are bringing in these things. There are a lot of irresponsible people that can't even make their doctor's appointments and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know. And it would have to be at least, I mean, we get at a minimum of 9,000 visits a month. So we have to at least break it out at, at 300, so I'm not sure how we can break that out to make that work. But
I do want to know.
I don't know.
But
I'm still saying we have to have the program.
I just want to remind folks that, we've had an initial inquiry, Linda and myself, and we'll be folding Tasha from Humboldt Sanitation into the loop also. Can you guys hear me? Because everybody is frozen. Okay, I see Elaine nodding her head. Okay, good. We are going to be having a conversation. It's conceptual at this point to see if we can pull in a nonprofit or someone who may be interested. Are you not hearing me, Rex?
May I?
I do now.
Okay.
May I throw out a motion?
You may.
Yeah, just one other thing before we go there. Jill, did you receive any emails or written comments from the public on this agenda item?
Just the aforementioned email that came in from Jason Robo. It didn't identify an agenda item. So.
Okay. All right. Yes, that's unless there's further comments or questions from the board, is there a motion?
Yes, I'm going to make a motion and recognize if no one seconds it, I won't be butthurt about it, but I figured it sometimes is helpful given that we've had lots of different ideas thrown out there. So I'm going to make a motion that we do a 90-day suspension of CRV buyback with the intention that we revisit this in September at our September meeting, where staff will present an update on other options, whether that's once a month, once a week, or whatever other alternatives, or these conversations with these other interested parties. Give us some sort of update on that at our September meeting so we can determine any next steps that we would want to take. And if the state does allow for a virtual training sometime during that period, that I would ask that our staff still move forward with receiving that training.
Yep.
So that is my long motion.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a second. Can we use the roll call, Tyler, to vote this motion?
Chairman, I'm assuming that means you were ready for me, just so you know you are a robot again. But we'll hit everybody and then I'll help fix you. Yes still sounds good, and no still sounds good in robo form. Whew. Bone.
No, just for the basic fact, I don't know why we're doing 90 days when we can actually schedule to be open on August 21st. And we should be focusing, at least trying to have answers by then for the public. So no.
Pereira. Sweeney.
Aye.
Castellani.
Aye.
Wilson.
My original motion would have been for 60 days, but I'm going to still say I'll go yes.
And Hogan.
Yes.
Motion carries. Do you want me to try to re-enter, Tyler, or do you want to?
Chairman, I'm going to try to reconnect you again. You have gone full echo chamber on us. At least we know this works.
The poor guy sounds like he's talking underwater.
I'm gonna maybe try a solution here since we're getting close anyway. Welcome back.
Okay, good to be back. Missed you all. So the next item on our agenda is
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
just real quick, are we going to come out with a press release saying that we're not going to be looking at, I mean, some of these people better just bite the bullet, because as I started going through emails, I get 2 or 3 emails a day, 4 or 5 phone calls a week about what the hell am I going to do with all my buyback stuff. And I think we owe them I think at least we better start telling the public, because it becomes a health hazard to keep all that stuff around for another 90 days, that they've already been keeping it around for 90 days. So are we going to come out, or should we just try to notify all our people any way we can?
Well, again, the governor suspended it through the 20th of August.
6 weeks, but we're going. You know,
yes, right. Yeah.
We're going 12.
I would anticipate, him extending it or suspending it further, but, that would be a question of
Here, I would like to make a comment on that with Rex. That was also a suggestion I was going to have, that we do a press release or some kind of public notice of what we're doing, and also why we're doing it. Bring it to their attention that Cal Recycle is the culprit. The hurdles that we're having to the reasons why we're doing it isn't to be just chicken in the situation, but we're being hamstrung by the state, and the public needs to be aware of that, and they can chime in on this to help solve the problem.
So if I could jump in real quick,
yes,
I have drafted a preliminary press release. I didn't want to be pre-decisional on any one thing. It'll be pretty straightforward to amend because I had it for indefinite. I can certainly put it and change it. I do want to note that with the governor's most recent extension of the executive order, we did get a press release out. It has run in both digital and print media, as well as Redwood News picked up the story, and that aired about a week and a half ago. And they did another one earlier this week to reflect some of the price changes that went into effect on July 1st for our facility. So I do have something. I'll be sending it to Michael probably tomorrow morning, and then we'll get it sent out on Monday, maybe tomorrow, because there's a couple of news medias that they put their print to bed on Saturday. You're not frozen. Am I frozen?
Yeah,
so the upshot is, yes, we can and will have a press release out.
Okay. Thank you. So executive director report, are you?
I just want to, I know, I've been yammering for so long. I just want to note a couple of things. I am tired. One is that our stormwater annual report and the inspection is complete. And again, we are finishing up our TPR that goes to the county in the next week. That'll be done. And I really want to thank and appreciate all of our employees for everything that they've been doing over the last few months. I think everybody had thought optimistically, shelter in place 2 weeks, and then we get to resume life. And that's not what it is. Everybody's made a number of different sacrifices, and I really want to thank our management team, because we are all going 7 days a week, and even during our days off, we're still checking emails or checking text messages, because there's just been a tremendous amount of work to do. I do want to note that today, when we had our meeting earlier, nobody's had any time off. I mean, we're all going, and we're at a point where you're not hearing some of the creative thoughts because we're beat. We're simply exhausted. And I know that we're not the only ones. Everybody who's handling things. So so I am asking all of our managers to give me some time and just take a week and turn off the devices so that they can begin to start recharging. I wish we could do it all at once. That's not going to happen, but that is one of the things that I really want to see everybody do, because we are in this for the long haul, and we are looking for at least a year to 2 years. We've got to find that new balance. It's really important to people's mental health, and I really want to thank them for all of their efforts in everything that we're doing.
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank you for just, being anticipating issues and continuing to do the cross training and the separate groups to control the spread. And I think, the vacation idea is absolutely essential. We don't run on lithium batteries, so we need to have the ability to recharge periodically. Do any board members have any questions of Jill regarding her director's report? Seeing, and I think I skipped an item actually on the agenda, and that's board member reports. Tyler, can we go down the roll call and see if there's any reports from board members, please?
Boom.
Nope.
Herrera.
I just wanted to share some personal news, since I haven't seen many of you in person for some time, but I'm 8 months pregnant, and I'm due.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, surprise.
Hey. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So that just does mean that when our little one arrives, that first month, obviously we'll be really focused on bonding. So that may mean that I won't be able to make it to our September meeting, but I will make sure that our alternate, Michael Winkler, is briefed and prepared for any discussion that's going to be had on, especially on this particular issue that we talked about tonight. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Happy times.
Castellano.
Nothing to report. Congratulations, Sophia. And thanks to all of staff for tonight's meeting.
Wilson.
Congratulations, Sophia, also. And I have nothing to report.
Hogan.
Nope, nothing to report. Thank you.
And Sweeney.
I have nothing to report as well. So with that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Our next meeting, as Jill said, we don't have a meeting in August, so our next meeting will be September 10th, 2020. And everybody stay safe and well and happy, and we'll see you in September. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
good night.